You should know better than me. English is your first language. What's the meaning of elites? People who hold high position in societies, right? In any societies. Either political power, economic power, corporate influence, or maybe in some societies, due to their value system, belief system, cultural traditions. Elites can be religious leaders. They may not be filthy rich. So, we all know, elites control society to some extent, am I right? Through different means. Page 207, am I right? Is that on page 207? We take this for granted, but elites control how we think. Elites control the ideologies. We take this for granted. In many, many countries, Asia, Latin American countries, Africa, the Western countries, hundreds of years ago, or even decades ago, heterosexual marriage is or was considered the norm. Now there are some changes. People's mindset have changed. So this has something to do with the elites, the ruling parties, the rulers of a given area, of a given country, society. They want people to see things in a certain way, things we take for granted. So for many, many years, heterosexual marriage, heterosexual unions are or were considered the norm. This is how elites control society through our ideas. They somehow, somewhat, and I'm sure you know, some elites in certain countries, they still do that. They instill a certain idea that same-sex marriage is wrong, bisexuality is wrong. I'm sure it still happens in some countries. And maybe some elites, they control society by saying that, oh, first cousin marriage is wrong. Sometimes they have some scientific reasoning, but sometimes it's okay. This is another example of how elites control society through ideas. Why don't North Koreans retaliate or revolt against Kim Jong-un? He was such a tyrant. Why don't North Koreans revolt against Kim Jong-un? Take a wild guess. You saw that video, most of you were here on Friday, right, on North Korea. There are so many of them, way more than the ruling party. Joseph?
Because you got the upper class of the society
Mm-hmm.
with certain privileges that they cannot revoke and which are beneficial for them, and then they're happy with what he's doing, so they try to keep him there.
So this is another way of how elites in North Korea control their general masses, their population, through ideas. They spread certain ideas that how they do things are bad. How South Koreans, how they do things are bad. How the democracy system is bad. How capitalist is bad. And North Korea is a closed door. They have a closed door policy. People can hardly get out of the country. Besides for diplomatic visits, or if they escape, that's a different story. So North Koreans, it's almost impossible for them to get out of the country for a visit, for a tour. No, it's almost impossible. So they live under that regime almost their entire life. So that's what they see, that's what they observe, that's what they experience. So this is another example of how elites control people through ideas, because they are not aware of what's going on beyond North Korea. Maybe they are less inclined to challenge their leaders. Do you buy that? And sometimes, I don't know if you consulted the social media, sometimes they write about North Korea, the internet. The internet is heavily filtered in North Korea. I'm sure you know. So there are some video clips on YouTube. Some Americans, sometimes Americans or Westerners, Brits, they can go to North Korea as English teachers, not as what, missionaries, no, as teachers or as tourists. And they will be on a guided tour. I'm sure you know that. So these Westerners, they went to North Korea. So sometimes they are allowed to take videos and post it on YouTube, maybe under close supervision. And that's what they talk about on their videos. If you ask a North Korean, what is Facebook? What would their reaction be? Do you have a Facebook account? If you go to North Korea, you ask people on the street, do you have a Facebook account? Can I friend you on Facebook? You are nice. I want to friend you on Facebook. How would they react? Do they know what is Facebook? No. So sometimes elites control the masses through information. Second point. Page 207, am I right? So they filter many things on the internet, on the social media. So North Koreans can only see certain things on the internet. So they may not be aware that, wow, people have Instagram, have Facebook, have LinkedIn beyond North Korea. It may not make sense to them. Are you familiar with the Rockefellers? The Rockefellers. Are you familiar with the Rockefellers? Pre-med, biology majors. Years later, when you got your degrees, when you got your medical degrees and UNK degrees or whatever degrees, when you are successful in your profession, medical profession, physicians, what else, what not, professors, department heads, you may have to write a grant to fund your research besides treating people. That's what physicians do, am I right? Or nursing faculties do. So I'm sure you realize that, or you better realize that, many of the research funding in your country, they are being granted by what? The Rockefeller Foundation. Have you all heard of the Rockefeller Foundation? You are giving me a blank stare. Have you all heard of the Rockefeller Foundation? They fund a lot of medical research. Are you aware of that? Who is pre-med here? Okay. So Logan and Billy, are you familiar with the Rockefeller Foundation? So, if we consider the Rockefellers elite in this country, they give a lot of money to research. And I'm sorry to burst your bubble. There's no such thing as a free lunch. Have you realized that by now, young people? There's no such thing as a free lunch. Is that true? Do you buy that? So when people give you money to do research, sometimes you have to follow their agenda, I'm sorry. So this is another way how elites control information through different research agendas. And turn to page 208, am I right? Sometimes elites control society by criticizing others. And your book gives example of how people in Thailand can be thrown into prison for criticizing the king. And it's not only in Thailand. Maybe it happens in North Korea for sure, in Cuba, who knows? In many countries in the world. And Thailand is a monarchy. Elites are the ruling party. Or the corporate executives. Sometimes they have affiliations with those ruling party in many countries. I'm sure you know. They literally run the country. It happens in many countries. So sometimes elites control a country, like in Thailand. The same in Singapore and Malaysia. We are all constitutional monarchies. We have a democratic system, ideally on the surface. But if the elites don't like somebody, they can say, or they can deem that person as communist, as socialist, and throw that person into prison without trial. The person cannot get a lawyer to defend himself. That's what happens in some countries in Southeast Asia. So some elites, maybe Castro, when he came to power, he threw people into prison. He criticized their different ideologies if they were from the old regime. It happens in China in the late 40s, early 50s, when communists came to power. Oh, do you feel that Facebook is safe? Many of you have Facebook, Instagram. Do you feel that Facebook is safe? Americans or young people? No, right. So elites control people through Big Brother technologies. All these gadgets you have, all these social media platforms you have, they are examples of Big Brother technology. Whenever something happens, I'm sure you know, I'm sure you realize, the law enforcement officers, the police, they go into people's, they hack into people's Facebook to try to close the case. Am I right? This is another way how elites control the general public. Sometimes they ask other people, usually police or law enforcement officers, to do their work. But this is how elites control people.